artificial memory, that it's quite close. But here's the wonderful thing. If you haven't seen the article already, go to lewismasonic.co.uk, have a look in the news section. You'll see the article on this. I've put this. We need to tell people this because it's so wonderful. If you practice artificial memory, your natural memory goes through significant, demonstrable, powerful improvements. And I'm talking about that you can tell the difference between someone who did 6 weeks of memory palace work and someone who hasn't, up to 7 to 10 years later. It rewires your brain for superior memory. Now, there's a lot of good things that are good for your mind out there, but have a look at the studies, and I think you'll find they're very good scientific protocol. They're very solid with it, and there's multiple of these because of memory champions and stuff that practice this. We've got sort of good controls to test against. Here, yes, there are also some other interesting benefits you can have a look at. So you'll find that we found that memory training prevents memory problems, but it also seems to keep you young in other ways. People who practice memory fall over less. They seem less coordinated. It's good for your whole system.
You said where was the article?
Yeah, have a look at lewismasonic.co.uk. I can put a link in the chat, or if someone else could, that would be wonderful.
Also, because I haven't read the other book that you've written, but do you mention any, like a syllabus, so to speak? So if a lodge wanted to start to incorporate the art of memory, both natural and artificial, and how they tie in together, etc., in relation to the Masonic Masonic backdrop, do you have anything that's written on how they could start to maybe implement something like this in terms of education?
And indeed, I want to make clear at this point that I have some very exciting things on all of these memory arts. So if you said, I want to study classical art, you said, I'm a Christian, Martin, where am I going? I've got some great plans for you too. If you're a Hermeticist, I know exactly where you should be practicing. And in fact, there's some members of the school I would recommend right here now. When it comes to Freemasonry, you've got your syllabus. So your lodge is a memory palace. Your ritual is your syllabus. Now, remember I talked about really doing it. Really doing it in philosophy is quite tough. You need to be completely honest. In Freemasonry, what if we were to really practice the ways that evidence shows the stonemasons about the time of Shaw would be practicing? So what you would do is you'd memorize your lodge first of all. You'd walk through it, just walk the same route you did in the first ceremony, and you'd get it to the point where you could paint it. That's the word they used to use. That's what Hugh of St. Victor from the 10th century and later on his works were spreading would say, paint in your mind till it's you can see it. And then when it's absolutely clear, you start to walk around and put the words, hook them on there. There's actually a great book on using memory palaces for memory verbatim. It's called Solomon's Memory Palace. Have a Google. I can't. It's an American author, I do believe. This is so have a look at that, if that might be a nice way to do that. It's not the method I've used, but get it word perfect. Remember what Aristotle tells us, of course, which is understanding is the first pin. So you need to know what you're saying. And believe. The Freemasons who first practiced those rituals were 100% convinced that if they memorized a piece on being temperate or treating everyone equally, they'd start to be better at being temperate or treating everyone equally. So they had this awe. When they were given a working tool, when they were given a, let's make up a random one, only the Masons will know if this is true. If they were given a ruler to measure the times of day, a time management, that might be. They'd contemplate that and they'd believe they were putting that quality in their mind. That belief does make a difference.
The last question, I don't want to hog up too much
No,
time. So the other question I have too in terms of art of memory, like the working tools, right? So if you look at certain aspects of the art of memory, those tools I believe are matching up with certain aspects of what we're discussing, like the imagination. I don't want to go into depth with which tool I think it relates to, but things like this, because although, you know, using the lodge as a memory palace, a lot of lodges, we have very superficial understandings of what the tools mean, right? But when you look at them in light of the art of memory, from Aristotle or others, you know, or even St. Thomas in the Summa Theologia, okay, now that makes sense. And then when you relate it back to the art of memory, both artificial, natural, it really starts to open up things. So I wanted to know too, in your book, do you mention that, or is there any works that you would recommend?
Yes, certainly. So you are absolutely correct that how do I put this? Masonic ritual's been changed around a bit. So some people here may be surprised to hear that different jurisdictions have different numbers of working tools. But they also may be surprised that it looks like, at least in the early ritual, there were 7 of them and they related to their sort of relation to them. Now, different jurisdictions also have different layers of how much people should talk about with these matters. So we're not going to go in too much in depth. There's a great book called What Do You Know About Ritual at Lewis Masonic, which goes into some of these really little details. But be aware it's written from an English point of view, but it does reference other jurisdictions. There's also one called The Freemason at Work. And the kind of things you're talking about there, my friend, these little bits that help you hook them in, but are fascinating and give you new insight, whether it's something on a tracing board or why you're doing something. These 2 books are full of those, and that's where I would recommend you start off with. There are also a book called The Emulation Lectures on the 3 Degrees. So imagine this is a book which is written, and sections of it are older than the modern Masonic ritual. These are questions and answers that give the absolute answer. So this is a traditional answer, not a modern person saying, I believe this or I believe that. This was the first education system of Freemasonry. The Emulation Lectures on the 3 Degrees, a wonderful book. It's probably the best guide to the hidden meanings in Masonic ritual, and ironically, it's the one that is least understood or seen.
Hey, Martin, I have a question. How you doing, brother? So I got a question. Is it Giovanni Pico della Mirandola? His memory, I hear, was very impeccable, right? And it is said that he can memorize the Divine Comedy backwards. Was he using the same method as Giordano Bruno was?
Yes. So interesting enough, in Italy, there is a lodge named after Pico della Mirandola, and he is known for his memory. I've read his Oration on the Dignity of Man. If you're a Hermeticist, you must read this. If you're a Freemason, you'll find this exciting too. But I don't know more than that. So I haven't read his memory methods and whether they're natural or developed. But I do know how he's inspiring people still now to get to their memory proficiency. I don't know if you're aware, my friend, but in England, there's a thing called the silver matchbox that you can get if you perform a ritual word perfect. That's no doubt, there's nothing, no correction. And it's like the zen of Masonic performance to get one of these with all 3 rituals. So you get a scratch on your matchbox saying you've got this down. So yes, so the answer to that, my friend, is unfortunately, I don't know. I'd love to know what memory methods he was using. I will ask my Italian friends and find out. And if you contact me, I'll let you know.
I was also questioning that you mentioned Saint Augustine, right? And I believe he mentioned a book called I'm maybe saying it wrong because it's in Greek, but the Caliphoria, something like that. But it was the teachings of the Manichaeans, right? And he mentions that Manny mentions the faculty of houses, like what Giordano Bruno has, the palaces and the mansions, right? And can you explain, because I read The Circles of Circe by Giordano Bruno, and he mentions these palaces, right? But he uses this, it's like a circle with letters, right? And then he has the pig, the pig in the middle,
In the center.
right? Exactly, yes. Can you mention how that method is related to the 36 deacons, right? Of what he uses? I believe you mentioned something like that once, that the 36 deacons are like the palaces and mansions, right?
Yes. So some of this is going over what should be mentioned or even talked about. Some of this is they're getting to some very important subjects. Let's talk the Circle of Circe. Bruno, of course, I told you, is a bit of a rogue. For him, there were always all these imbeciles opposing him. I couldn't understand it, why they wouldn't just let him study and listen to what he says and stop all this limited thinking. And the Circle of Circe is his bestiary. Do you remember I talked about that medieval bestiary? And he's using this, he's showing you how people around you, they're more in touch with the form of a porcupine because they're so spiky, or they're so in touch with the form of a crab because they keep nipping at you. But what people don't realize in the Circle of Circe is there's a naughty bit in there. It is an incantation. He is cursing his enemies with it as well. He's saying, right, you keep nipping at me, well, you're going to be a crab then. You're going to be a porcupine, right, you're going to be a porcupine. Now, I'm going to move a little bit on from this. The wheels that he uses come from Lullism. Oh, everyone here must feel a little bit sorry for my partner, Kitty. Many of you have met her. She had 4 months of me studying Lullism every evening. It is so hard to get. Lullism is when you have a wheel, and it's a reasoning, it's a contemplation in itself. So you would say to yourself, right, I've got a question. Let's think about where it originally comes from. Is it an earth, air, fire, water question? Well, that's one form of Lullism. Or, right, let's work out, do I believe in this? Have I seen it? Yes, no, maybe. Do I like it? Yes, no, maybe. Am I going to test it? Yes. Do I need to test it? Yes, no, maybe. There's gates of contemplations through the different forms of logic, through the different traditional areas. Remember I mentioned it is so complicated. Bruno saw these, which you memorized, and Bruno actually wrote some guidebooks as to how to use them. And suddenly, you see Bruno, who's all coded and all strange, suddenly when he's writing for the Emperor of Bohemia, suddenly writes simply. He says, there you go, this is how it works. Here's a memory palace for you to use them, and here's some nice images. Think, what? Is this really Bruno? I don't know. Maybe that means he respects him, or he means he doesn't. I don't know. But then he realized that in these contemplations, you could get some very deep states. So the most simple way to use one of these wheels would be to contemplate one concept. So if I wanted to contemplate love, I'd have a wheel with 3 different layers on it, and I'd have each letter represents different qualities, and I'd say, right, so the letter in the middle, A, is love. B would be towards me. So I contemplate love towards me, move it, and then I'd like love towards C would be my partner, love towards them. E towards my family. D towards a stranger. E, and it would move on. And then you start to add other contemplations. So you would get quite complicated. Can I feel this type of love towards this person, towards someone I don't know? Can I feel this? And because of this, you would reach very deep states of contemplation, and you'd experience what Bruno would see as signs of your success there. These were almost like a contraction. He uses the word contraction. This is a mystical experience. He's talking about samadhi. He's teaching you samyama, he's teaching you meditation, but he's got a different term. And these wheels are like mandalas that rotate for that. This could be another talk, and we'd need the diagrams. There's people here who haven't even seen the wheels thinking, wow, what does that mean? The other way he'd use them is he'd have different figures. So he'd have a person, an object, and something they're doing. And this is really good for numbers, believe it or not. If you want to memorize long numbers, and you say Hercules with a club killing the Nemean lion, and you turn the wheel, and it would suddenly be Perseus with the club killing the Nemean lion. And you can use these for numbers, and you can use for advanced things. The rest of that is something for advanced practitioners, and it's something very sacred that you've touched on there, and very, very important, but beyond the scope of this public lecture.
So, Brother Faulks, this is...
Hello, Ian. Sorry to keep you waiting there. He asked such an interesting question.
No, sorry, I don't think I did. I was asked the question.
No, not you. I was saying the previous person.
Oh, previous question. Yes, it was a very fascinating,
so
fascinating
that's why
question.
I kept you waiting. Sorry.
It was a fascinating question, and the lecture, I think, is really good. Those among us who have delivered ritual in lodge have all experienced this, I think, where we have memorized it forwards, even backwards. I've done, and yet in the moment. You start to experience gaps in your memory. And I mean, beyond using the lodge room itself as your memory palace, do you have any suggestions in terms of techniques that can help us
yeah, certainly
work through that?
Yes. Oh, what a wonderful question as well. I think we're going to have just as long an answer. So memory as a discipline and as a practice is something that can help us develop all aspects of ourselves. If you've been performing lodge ritual, or for those here that haven't performed ritual, you might have a similar circumstance where you're giving a talk or so on, or a part of a play. Drifting off is not your friend. And that is where the beginning of it is focus. You've probably been there, you've got a ritual bit, and you've got a prompt. There's a prompt, someone's going to say that prompt, and then your big bit's up. And you sit there for the first hour saying, when's the prompt? When's the prompt? It's not coming. And then you think, oh, what am I going to do? Maybe I'll get an earlier train back after this. And then the prompt comes. And you in that moment have to say, right, brain, not thinking about that. I want you to immediately recall 15 minutes of a soliloquy for me. Go. And you're there. And that's a bit like trying to make yourself go to sleep. If you're in a blank and you try to do that, it's very hard. Your subconscious isn't working with you. So first and foremost, remember, memory in the moment is as much an awareness exercise as anything else. Mm-hmm. Watch everything everyone is doing. Remember, and even if you remember, that is part of the exercise. It's always your turn. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's an interesting thing. Sorry to you move to a different discipline, but in martial arts, have you ever seen how martial artists, they do this thing where they say, right, whose turn is it? Mm-hmm. I'm going to do something to you. Yes. You're going to be passive. It's always your turn. From the moment you're born to the moment it's over, it's always your turn. You're always up. Mm-hmm. Don't give yourself excuses to have less powers, less focus, and less awareness in some moments. So in that ritual, that's the first thing to P manager. You're always aware, you're always looking for that moment. If it does happen, make room for confidence. A lot of people think that as soon as they're up, they have to start speaking. Take a little bit of time.
Right, take a
to
moment.
walk up there.
Yeah.
Oh, another important thing is that people are not as aware of your shortcomings as others, as you might think.
Yeah.
I've seen some wonderful improvisation. Now, please forgive me for people who aren't members of Freemasonry here for this, but this is such a wonderful example of being in the moment. Someone had forgotten to have the apron to be presented to the person in a lodge. The worshipful master, instead of doing this in the middle of a ceremony, like, what? Where is it? Oh my God! Oh, you know, he said, Brother Tyler, could you get Brother Inegard? Could you please process the apron in for our new candidate? Symbolically, the apron will enter the lodge as to he has been made a new Mason. And it seemed like part of the ritual.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be scared to fill in a little bit if there's a crazy problem. And it worked. The candidate had no idea that wasn't part of it. So there's a good thing. Now that brain freeze, incidentally, that comes on with nerves, sometimes that's interpretation. Excitement and nerves feel the same for people.
Yes. Yeah.
That's quite an interesting thing. I've also noticed other things like that. I always have 100 emails waiting. And in them, there's a few emails saying, why haven't you answered my emails?
Yeah.
Because whenever the Lewis Masonic mailing list sends out to 75,000 Masons, someone thinks, ooh, I wonder if that book's in print. And, so I do my best to keep up. I've noticed in me, I'm thinking, wow, there's lovely people to talk to all the time. Really looking forward to answering them. It's some of my friends, they're thinking, oh no, there's so much pressure. And I think we're feeling the same feeling. I'm wanting to get to them and they're wanting to get to them, but they're thinking, ooh, I'm thinking, yes. So I think interpretation of the nerves also helps. But also some degree of acceptance. The perfection is not possible on this plane. I had this horrible thing when, for me, I memorized this. One of our rituals is very, very long and very, very deep, and it's performed without the best lighting. And
I think I know which one you refer
yes,
to.
I've got that word perfect. I do mean word perfect.
Yes.
On the way to that ceremony, somebody with a bike clipped my trousers, that's pants for the Americans here,
Yes.
and ripped them so significantly that I couldn't carry on with that mission. I had to rush home. I didn't think they would work going to this meeting, this important meeting and everything, and sort of, just only half dressed.
Yeah, pants.
So, and it was sort of stressed, going backwards and forwards, going, trying to get back, get back. When I got there, I had it there, but it was all swimming around a bit. Okay, so that's part of the training of that night. Likewise, I've also found in myself that you have two choices. If you invite me to your lodge, and I hope you do, and you want me to perform a piece of ritual, it's going to be English emulation. You can say, Martin, do it with feeling and really connect with that person, but the word beneficence might become goodness. The odd word will change a bit.
Yeah.
Or you can have it word perfect, but it will be like you've brought Spock to your lodge. So he'll be talking and everything will be just right and just so, and there will be no mistakes, but I may as well be performing it to a pot.
Yes.
So I choose the one where there's a bit of ab lib from the heart. It's a bit of, sometimes I'll say just the odd word wrong. And I've actually seen that. I've seen that deliberately done.
Yes.
I was once in a Scottish lodge where the worship master thought, this guy's too nervous. He's not even paying attention. So he just stopped it. Said, you know, I won't do a Scottish accent here, but he said, you know, my dear, well, he didn't say my dear fellow, he probably said my wee laddie or something, but he said to him, you know, I'm really sorry, you're obviously very nervous and I'm worried you're going to miss out on this. And he stepped down and he sort of talked him into sort of more calm state, and he explained what had happened so far in normal words.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the oldest, most respected Scottish, and I thought that's genuineness.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just going through the words so you can have a drink afterwards.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, thank you for, yes, Ian.
Thank you so much for that
It's
answer.
a longer answer than you expected, yeah.
Thank you for the lecture. One of the things that you hit upon early on with the running through the palace reminds me of what goes on through my brain and why there's a certain officership that helps me with my memory. Because I had a background as a dancer for 17 years. So if I'm in a different place, I can remember more. So constantly moving around the stage and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But you also hit on mnemonic devices. I used to memorize everybody's phone numbers. So back before we used area codes, there would be like 666-1672 was Devil Suite 16 Dakota and so forth. But the whole idea of using all of yourself for the memory is something that works for me, like I said, due to 17 years of training and as much time performing. You know, I hadn't done a spoken part in years until I came into the craft, and all of a sudden I had to memorize lines. Whereas when I was younger and I was constantly active, I was able to memorize an entire script for a movie in 2 days. And, you know, not just wait for my cue, but know what came before and what came after. I think that is an important part. Some people try to memorize their part and their cue for their part. And as you say, if the rest is a blank, how does it fit into the whole? So knowing the whole is what helps you and not such a burden thereafter, because it's only a small portion of the whole. But I love the way you've taken us through the history of methods of memory. I think you're great.
What a wonderful thing to share. I'm very glad you just explained this, because here's a take home. You've just touched on the essence here. Our minds like lots of different links and combinations. So as we heard here, very wise discourse on dancing and connection, how you're going to connect telephone numbers and things like that. Your mind wants a lot of information, and it likes to have things linked up. There's a wonderful study where they call it the Baker-Baker paradox. If you get someone to walk up and say to someone, hello, my name's Mike Baker. And you get another person to walk up and say, hello, my name's Mike, I am a baker. The people who heard I am a baker have got something like an 89% higher chance of remembering than the people who heard it as a name. The other people who heard it as a name will say, Mike Butcher, Matthew Barker. It's because our mind likes images. So if you want to remember someone's name, pay a lot of attention to them to begin with. Say, hello, Marion. How are you? And you find out, what do you do for a living? What's your favorite color, Marion? Tell me more about yourself. You can make a little bit of joke. You can imagine as Maid Marion. You probably have other Marions. Maybe that's a very English Maid Marion, you know, is Robin Hood. You could connect her. Marion Bell, that name rings a bell. Imagine Maid Marion ring a bell. Try to make something about her appearance. Everyone's doing this to you now, Marion. We'll all remember your name forever now. So maybe you can imagine that Robin Hood gave her that necklace, or something about her hair is like Maid Marion. And maybe you can imagine, connect her, you can imagine the bells sort of with her glasses. Next time you see her, you've got lots of these lovely links. Use her name lots. So when she says, hello, I'm Marion, don't say, oh, pleased to meet you. Say, hello, Marion, pleased to meet you. Use it 2 or 3 times and really lock it in with lots of information and take an interest. Remember that first tip. If you forget certain things, it might be an area where you need to look at. So we all remember what we're excited about. If you're forgetting names, maybe it could be good to be more excited about the people you meet. If you're forgetting appointments, maybe it's time to look at why those appointments aren't interesting. This is a path of enlightenment through memory, and it's really worth it. Remember the octopus principle. Lots of different hands. Try to get 8 different things about the thing you want to remember. Just like Brother Ponytail.
You gonna put that in like a jar or something, or?
Yeah, I put olive oil.
Ah, okay.
Yes, my actual name's Robert Cummington, but yes, right where she
Oh, thank you, Robert.
my moniker. I love to follow up on it. And by the way, if somebody said, you know, I was a Mr. Baker, my mind would go to Sherlock Holmes because he lived on Baker Street. Right?
Oh, yes.
But that's my rewired dyslexic
You
brain.
can put some salt on it.
Yes. No, there you go. There's an interesting point. With dyslexia, I've been musing about this. So I wonder if with, there are some people, I'm not saying we're still thinking about dyslexia. I'm dyslexic myself. There are some people that believe that it could be that dyslexics are using a different part of their memory for storage. So they're putting the memory for small things into the big picture area. So that's why dyslexics are so good at big picture thinking and planning and seeing large patterns. But it's the part that is for small patterns, it's probably evolved for face recognition, is where most people are putting their letters or their numbers. It's a brain coordination thing. Now, here's what I've noticed. As a person, I tend to be quite big picture, little detail things. A lot of the time I don't understand why people are so interested in them. And it's hard for me to get those. Well, after years of memory training, you can't not be detail. It's all putting things in little boxes and everything. I've noticed my dyslexia is starting to disappear. Now, I'm not saying that it's cured, but there's a lot of things that I never did. I never tried to remember words and so on. I thought it was automatic for other people, but I've noticed that it isn't. People do make more of effort. And my confidence started to grow with it. I think we should always take opportunities to improve our mind, no matter what people have said our talents are or so on. If you've got a sat nav, use it for the first 2 times you go to that place, but use it to teach you to go to that place. If you've got a calculator, use it if you're stuck. But if you've got this calculation, do it. Keep the mind going. You were talking about dance and so on. This is all very good for the mind. Yes, so we're talking about, James is saying he's a musician. This is an absolute wonderful area as well. I know people who have linked other things. They've made tunes out of sentences they want to remember. Their octopus principle, they've put many hands on it. So I think, yeah, let's use it.
There's definitely been research that shows that use of GPSs in automobiles has a significant negative effect on people's spatial awareness.
That's interesting. Well, I suppose a lot of our modern things, we're using crutches when we can walk normally.
Yes, yeah, and the use of the mental crutch causes that part of the brain to atrophy. And I've certainly noticed since, in the last decade or so, when I've been working on ritual, that my memory in other areas has improved.
But this is, of course, now we start to go back to Plato, who has a scene where, of course, the invention of writing is seen as a negative thing because it destroys our ability to memorize. So there we are. So I think we need to find a balance. We need to find a balance. We need to use everything to our advantage, keep advancing, keep improving.
Thank you very much for your lecture. I was wondering, have you experienced Toastmasters as a way to improve your eloquence and the way you present a speech or do a lecture?
I believe that my eloquence, if I possess such, has come as a side effect of my training in meditation and the kindred arts. I must be absolutely clear that this training is in a different system than any we've mentioned here. So I am a student of Franz Barden, the Czech practitioner. So have a look at his works. And I think that learning to hone the mind through meditation, this has been my greatest blessing of my life, is learning this path. May have aided my coordination of other things, of course, because of course the mind leads the words and leads the bodies. The different masters we talked about, I enjoy reading them, and but my mind is always moved by practical things. So my study is not led by interest, it's led by want for ability. So I'm always looking for something. So the reason why someone gets read is there is a point in my development that I'm trying to reach, and they are specialists in that area. So imagine this, if there's no one living, and I will, if there's someone in Japan or someone in India or someone in the Czech Republic who's got the skills that I'm wanting to learn, I will spend time with them. It's great spending time with people better at what you want to do. It's almost like just being near them, you get better at it. So I think they have helped me in that respect. And I think that just as charity is a side effect of virtue, I would hope that my eloquence comes as a side effect of my meditation practice and contemplation practice.
Hello, brother. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, for the others, I was just referring to Toastmasters, which is an international organization that helps individuals be better at public speaking. And a bit like Martin mentioned in one of his, during the lecture, when you have somebody paying good attention, that's the way you express yourself. Once you present your own speech, you have one person watching out for your grammar, one person watching out for the time you're allocated, etc., etc. And it's a pretty great organization to start, I would say, like baby steps if you are to face public speaking and not be scared of it anymore. That's all.
Oh, certainly. Vincent, you're going to find this is a beautiful mishearing. When you said Toastmasters, I thought you said those masters, referring to the three that we were talking about.
Pardon my French accent.
No, it's all very wonderful. But you got a soliloquy on the how these masters had affected me. Toastmasters, for me, the ability to speak isn't something I've ever focused on myself. I should certainly recommend if someone does really want to go down that alleyway, then finding a specialist in that and a specialist organization may be of value. But that one in particular, I've never heard of. Thinking about it, many of the people here have probably learned because in Freemasonry, we're talking about all this memory stuff, you do, especially I think in English Freemasonry, end up having to give speeches, and they start off with very small ones when you're saying, thank you very much, I really appreciate that. And they end up with very big ones when you're saying very complicated things. So maybe they have Toastmaster style training, whether they through that. So yes, But yes, there everyone. So do look up Toastmasters if you wish to learn to speak. We have a recommendation here from Vincent.
Brother, I was mentioning what I wanted to bring up was one of the things that has helped me. And I don't know, it's interesting when you were talking about, you know, building these palaces, but my method of memorization, I mean, I'm really big on memorization, was what I used to call stacking. It's kind of like fortification or building a pyramid. So basically, I would start off with a line in a particular part of the ritual, and at that point, I would say that line, and then I would do the second line, and then I would do first line, second line, then do the third line, first line, second. So each time I kept starting over, which was like building a bigger foundation. So by the time I get to the end, which is like the top of the pyramid, that's the part that I knew the least. I knew the beginning and all the parts before it. Much, you know, I was much more firm in my memory with it because I had started over so many times and repeated it so many times. So the part that I didn't know was the end instead of the beginning. It was like building the foundation of, as I said, you keep going up because I kept starting over. So I found your analogy or the mentioning of building these palaces in your mind, memory palaces, very poignant to what I was, you know, the way I learned things, which is by, again, starting over. So I do it line by line. So the other part of that is I memorize things because of reading ritual, I know what side of the ritual, or like in my mind, I'm flipping pages as I'm going on. So if I'm there prompting or I'm going through something, I know exactly what part of the ritual that particular piece of work comes from, so that I remember, because that's how I remember it from starting over all the time. I found that useful.
Yes, this is right. So a few things here, and once again, wonderful. Thank you for bringing this up. So Cicero, who we saw mentioned, I've actually just got back from the hometown of Cicero in Arpino. Cicero, he said, well, this memory palace thing is very good for people who've got natural memories, but you got to memorize things to use it. And he used to say that for him, a method like a wax tablet itself was better. He would visualize the page, a bit like you were saying. Now, for arts verbatim, like you're talking about memorizing something specifically, there are some things you can do to add to that. So your stacking method, which is a really good way of remembering it, is to add some fun images in there. Now, in medieval English documents, some of these images to help monks memorize were silly. They called them marginalia. They put two little pictures. You can do your own memory images. So let's imagine, right, you're trying to remember a poem, and that poem, there's bits that just don't stick. You're trying to remember Shakespeare. So you say, to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of, oh, I can't get that. That keeps missing it. Then you know it's time to put an image in there for you to remember. So this bit of Shakespeare, the slings and arrows, the next bit is of outrageous fortune. So you'd imagine that at this point, when you say arrows, that you are shooting a bow and you're hitting fortune in the form of a woman dressed as O Fortuna. And it hits on the bum and she goes mad. Outrageous fortune. Very silly image, very easy to remember. Next time you're going through, you say this. Now, if you're in a room, you can put that in the location. You can actually say, you can do a sentence on each wall. You can say, to be or not to be, that is the question. Maybe there's an image of a question mark there in your imagination. Whether it's noble in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of, I've forgotten that, outrageous fortune. Or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep, no more. And so whenever you get an image or a word which is being a bit tricky, put a funny image to it. You're remembering a bit about how a chisel points out the value of something. Make sure you point that chisel in your imagination, or sort of something like that. Make a silly image, make a fun image, make a shocking image, make a rude image. Remember the mermaid, not mermaid, the milkmaid we had at the beginning of our memory palaces. And that might add to that stacking. And they also believed, this is talking again Cicero, that by doing that, you get through it quicker, and you don't get the thing where you've got the beginning bit, which is perfect. You get to the end, and because you've been doing your stacking, that's all vague. And you can see that when people perform things. You get to the end, you can see they're going, oh, this is going into hard territory. I only did the last 2 sentences 3 times. They think the images can help hook them. After a while, by the way, you forget the images. The images go into the subconscious. Oh yes, I think one of the brothers is sharing a links on YouTube. There were also some demonstration videos. If some brother could share, there's a demonstration video of memorization of a pack of cards. There's a demonstration video I've done of memorizing a magazine, of memorizing a set of DVDs. It'd be lovely for you to see them if people could share the links. Brother Butcher, thank you very much, and what a wonderfully memorable name. This is very good.
Brother Falk, I have a question for you. So you are a practitioner of a particular form of meditation. You're a practitioner of memory art, and you are a Mason. Can you talk about any synergies between the two that you've noticed and developed? Brother, I think you're on. I think you're on mute.
Okay, you should be able to hear me again now.
Yeah.
All got muted. And for me, Freemasonry is more about inspiration. And I think this is an important point in our talk. It's lovely when Masons open up talks so that everyone can attend. So there are many non-Masons here, and make them public so that others can see them. And this is an opportunity to explain a bit about what Freemasonry is and to make sure that people have a clear vision. We've talked about some very deep subjects and some very important different things, which many of us connect with here. But Freemasonry is very gentle and open for all. Its goal is the cultivation of virtue to make you a better person. And there are some Masons that you'll meet that see more ambitious goals in there. That's fine. But if we look at the base of it, it really is quite free in that sense. And there are people who come along to Lodge and they memorize small bits. And the people like us, or some of the members here, that have memorized a huge amount. In my life, Freemasonry takes the position of a really inspiring film or set of books that I look at the rituals and I get more from them each time. I like the memorization and I like the inspiration from it. I wouldn't put it in the same category as the comprehensive, dedicated training that would come with if you were to be a Zen Buddhist. I'm not saying there isn't a Zen aspect in there, but I think it's a bit more gentle. I think Freemasonry is more universal in the sense that you can come along and you can learn some of the ritual, learn to be a bit of a different speaker, and donate some money. So I think that's where Freemasonry is in my sense, and I think that's a very positive thing. It's a very inclusive thing because of that. Now, I think Robin has shared her screen by mistake, so I would ask that Anthony, if you could cancel that, thank you. Can you imagine you click your screen, you don't share and you don't know about it, suddenly everyone's looking at your desktop. So it's good timing there, Anthony, very quick, so to save us seeing what wallpaper Robin has. So yes, it's a gentle art, and that makes it very compatible. And I think that makes it also have great synergy in the sense that you're learning awareness, you're learning concentration, you're learning memory, and you're learning to get on with people of all classes and all walks of life. So in England, you could be sitting next to a bin man from Croydon, a farmer from Yorkshire, or a lord, or a member of the royal family, or anything like that, and they're all equal. I suppose in America, that would be, you could be sitting next to someone from Southern America who's a cowboy of some sorts, and sitting next to a big businessman from New York, and learning to treat them all the same, learning to respect everyone's position in life. This is a big, important lesson, and this is a positive thing. One of my friends once said to me, Freemasonry has allowed me to get on with people I don't get on with. I thought that was quite a beautiful summary. Anthony, I'm not sure whether that quite answers your question, but I hope that has provided something of benefit, and it'd be and allowed people viewing this to kind of understand how it works.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
Hey, Martin, I got a quick question. This is actually going back to Giordano Bruno on his book, The Circle of Circes. When I'm reading it, and the images he has in it reminds me of tarot, and they look very similar. Do you think there is a similarity between the mansions and the palaces with tarot? Do you think there's any link there?
Oh, that's interesting. I'm unaware of a link between the mansions of the moon and the tarot directly, but I think people have it's come via the Kabbalah. I think people have done that. It's not an area I know that much of. What I certainly do know is that the tarot cards could be used as a very powerful and effective memory palace, couldn't they? And Bruno would probably have been aware of them. There's a few Bruno things, and I'm not quite sure what to do with them, that you could watch out for. Do you know he talks about the key, or the master key book?
Yes.
I am pretty sure I've found it. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to clear that up. Now, my friend and I, it was just stumbled over what he really meant. And we found the text, and we're going to make sure it's translated and ready, and there'll be a big reveal. I just need to make sure it's firm. I just need to see that it's got in it that I want. There are other things of Bruno not ever translated. You talked about the pictures of Bruno. There's one picture he may have drawn himself, but the emblems that Bruno describes but have not been pictured are very interesting things. I'll have a look again at the Circle of Circe and have a think about whether there's a tarot connection. As I said, it's not an area I know too much about. There are certainly images of the mansions of the moon and images of the decans. Are you aware of these?
Yes, I am. Yes, and I believe I think he mentions it in one of the. I think it's in a shadow, the book of
yes. So he draws his from the Picatrix. And of course, these are images that were made to connect with these celestial forces, and they were originally made as a these would be talismanic. They would be, but he's using them as a means to tune in. So let's be straight. The earliest memory palace that ever was is the zodiac. We looked up in the stars and we played a game of join the dots so we could identify the areas. We used it to navigate the world. It only took a few hundred years for us to decide they were navigating us. And then Bruno wants us to use them. He wants us to connect our memory with the different areas of the stars. And this is hinting at this other technique I was talking about your mind being directly linked to something beyond the normal consciousness. This is part of what Flood and would and be aware that Robert Flood is the next book. It's just being designed. It would be coming out. If you haven't gone to lewismasonic.co.uk and signed up to the newsletter, you'll get this soon. Flood says there are two arts: the square art and the curved. The square is when you balance earth, air, fire, water. You sort your characters out. And you manage to make sure that you are a balanced, good, fit receptacle. And the curved art, the royal arch, you can kind of see how these two could fit together. And this is what you're on here. And this is a very delicate matter to discuss and to advise. Are you alone on this path, or do you have a teacher or a guide for this?
No, but just alone. Yes.
Yeah. This is possible, but with this, you're in an area where you need to be very cautious and listen to inspiration, or it might be worth seeking out a teacher of sorts that can help you here. But yes, the tarot, and anything you find on this, do send me. It'd be lovely to see.
Yeah, I asked because tarot spelled backwards is realtor, and then we had the realtor wheel, right? And I believe this was also mentioned in the manifestos, right?
Yes.
It mentioned realtor, right?
Yes. So I'm actually putting a talk together for the Society's Rosicrucian in Anglia on this. So everyone here, there's going to be another talk. If you want to come to this, it's actually about a Rosicrucian memory palace. I am convinced that the tomb of Christian Rosencrantz is a memory palace used for meditation. You can see there are earlier designs in Flood of what is on the ceiling. Please excuse me, anyone who isn't au fait with Rosicrucian texts. This is a moment of pure nerdery, enthusiasm between those who are interested in this. But yes, this is a chamber of regeneration. This is how you connect and how you work with these things. You're stepping on the floor, which has its own depictions, and the walls themselves have important aspects to them, but the ceiling is where you're aspiring. Remember the Christian memory palaces we were talking about. So yes, I think it could be, and yeah, maybe the tarot has got a hidden aspect to it. In the Franz Barden system, each tarot is seen as a very important lesson. And at the beginning of each one of his books, he describes the principles, and he uses this tarot as a memory palace for you to memorize all the principles. I'm sure this could be used in other traditions as well. So,
yeah, you're welcome. I'm a big fan of Franz Barden and his works, especially the Hermetic initiation ones. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Most appreciated.
Sorry.
Are you?
Okay, go. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Martin, for this lecture, and everyone for the questions. Sorry for my English. I'm from Argentina. I'm always was a big fan of mnemonics, and I started to learn Chinese characters. And a book I read is a method for remembering kanji or Chinese characters in Japanese, and this guy is teaching us to recreate from images, but our own images. So then later I tried to investigate the etymology of Chinese characters and found that there are when oneself imagines this kind of things, it might get lost, and etymology maybe gives guidance. So I found later that when we can link that ancient knowledge with our present time and circumstances, it's better for the mind to link with the present experiences. And when you mentioned Giordano Bruno, that he goes around and question everything, I think I need to know before question, like Giordano Bruno, maybe he knew at that time, but now I might get lost if I use too much imagination. So do you think that we need to find a correct balance between imagination and theoretical knowledge or guidance from a teacher?
Yes, so let me please, this is wonderful you've asked this. So when it comes to memory, the memory artist really wanted to be individual. This is part of a talk on Freemasonry art of memory, which if you haven't seen, I know that some people here have seen, will just tells you how craftsmen, actual builders in the old days, when they would learn to make their own tools at the beginning of their training. And in the art of memory, the first thing you'd learn was to make your own tools, make your own memory palace, make your own images, but it would all be individual. Now, for this, you don't really need much of a teacher, you just need knowledge on how to do it. This is very, very good. And you do need to make it connect with you, and you find what works and amplify it. This is wonderful. The reason I mentioned a teacher earlier on is because the questions we were talking about were about a very advanced art, which goes beyond the scope of just normal memory. When it comes to normal memory, we're just trying to remember something like that, we're okay on our own. I love what you're doing with the kanji. They've got these images in there. I think there are even books and methods of memory palaces which are based on this. And did you know that Samandi's got as far as China? There is a Christian influence, and there are Chinese texts on that mentions Samandi's or chaos and teach about memory palaces and so on. How wonderful! So yes, a balance between technique and what works. Keep improving, keep going your own direction. Peter Phoenix, have I got his name right? Let me check. There was a text called The Phoenix, and the name of the character will come back to me in a second. This was a famous text that was published in England, and in this text, the author confesses some of his own methods. And he says that he always makes new memory palaces. Peter of Ravenna, that's it, Peter of Ravenna. And so he publishes this memory text during the Renaissance time, and he makes the mistake of confessing that he found that he could remember anything he wanted if he connected it with a woman he found very attractive in an erotic scene. And so this memory manual goes out, and it's got all different methods in there, but this one is the one that pays attention. So he's, imagining his first girlfriend, or imagining a woman he's seen holding objects or with numbers written on her or anything. And it was his perfect memory. So yes, and likewise, sometimes you'll find that silly versions of names and things work really well. If you want to remember someone's name, you can come up with a slightly funny version of it. Sometimes it's good to go in the direction where your memory is, but don't tell anyone if it's something that will offend them. Incidentally, the first memory palace ever published in English is quite an exciting one. Your home is the first memory palace. You all know your own home, set up 30 locations in that. How do you go further? You can have a home of every color of the rainbow. So that was the first memory palace, 1300s, published in English. You go into your house normal. Then when you next to your memory, want more memories, you go into it blue. You go into it, so you've got a whole blue house, you've got a whole green house, so you do every color you can imagine and use it for different things. I thought that was a really wonderful innovation. I thought I'd share that bit of fun. So change the colors, change the locations a little, the significance of them. And one memory palace can be used for a lot. And with kanji, you could do with that. Okay, any other questions? Does anyone dare ask any other questions?
I just wanted to go back to the dyslexic thing again, because now that you mentioned colors, I don't know if anybody had done this purposefully, but when I had troubles with writing, I was given a tutor, and the phonics book had different colors on each page. To this day, I still see certain colors to form certain sounds. And I experimented when I was teaching in after school through a program called Dancing Through Barriers. I was able to identify dyslexic children before I was told their diagnosis by the school nurse, and help them with their reading in the same period that I struggled, which was 2nd to 3rd grade. And they seemed to work well with it. So I got the technical director of Dance Theater of Harlem to give me gels so I could gel up the lights and have the kids experiment with the 3 basic colors and mix them based on mood and so on. And all of them by 4th grade had a test called Listen and Write. We had Listen and Dance, so that they were prepped for that.
Yes, I like the use of color there to make things more memorable. Remember, we had to make things shocking and exciting. There are many memory techniques that can make things a lot easier for people that we don't use. There's also some that, you know, could be utilized. When you don't have writing, you tend to develop some quite amazing things. There are African memory systems which were secret arts that only certain people in the tribe would learn. There are Aboriginal ones involving song lines and different stories. Memory boards which would have different scratches and jewels on them, and what they would be doing is they'd memorize every single so the Aborigines could remember every single bird in the whole of the Australian bush, and they'd have things like they'd have a species, as it were, and they'd have a story. The blue-beaked one got blue beak because it got dyed in the water or whatever, and they'd have that story associated with a bead, and they'd have 4 scratches from the bead of the 4 types of it, and they'd have this as a whole memory patterns. There's some lovely arts that we could use. We could make things more memorable again. Literacy and the ability just to search for something has taken away our skillfulness with memory. And nowadays we think it's enough just to tell someone. Isn't it interesting that we nowadays have forgotten so much of our own tradition, and that our tradition is so much based on memory. Yes. So good thing about it is memory's made to hold on. So it tends to be hidden in certain ways. It tends to be still with us. Memory becomes subconscious. When you make a list and you number it, that's from Ramism. That's a certain form of memory practice. It's quite modern, numbering a list. It's interesting how Roman memory methods were quite funny. If you had to remember certain things, when you walk out and you think, oh, I've got my wallet, my phone, and I've forgot my keys, or I've got my keys in my wallet. They used to, if they had 4 things they used to have to remember, they'd put them in their imagination on the corners of the door. So as they walked out, they'd go, money sack, key, scroll, whatever they had to do, they'd go through it as a checklist. And there's a lot of these in life memory systems that we don't use anymore. When you meet someone, making a sort of connection with their name, if you meet someone called Michelle, maybe you could see a feature of her, maybe her nose looks like a shell. If you meet someone called Martin, maybe you could somehow connect that tin aspect. Maybe they've got glasses made of tin. I don't know. You making an image is a natural thing. So I think these day-to-day memory arts and adding them in is a very positive thing. Now we have, I think many people are starting to disappear now. So perhaps we should make this our last question. What are the thoughts of people attending?
Yeah, I think we're gonna start wrapping it up now. Brother Falk, this has been an amazing lecture. The Q&As has been equally amazing. You basically gave us 2 lectures in one, so we really appreciate it. We're definitely gonna have to bring you back again for that Freemason lecture as well too. So keep us in mind for that. That was beautiful. Everybody, thank you for attending with us today. Just to let you know, towards the end of September, we're going to be having a Spanish language lecture series as well too. So if you are interested in that, we'll also have that translated into English as well too after this effect. So beware of that. We're going to send you out a link with a link to Brothers Faulks website, especially to his Lewis Masonic Company. We put some of the links inside of the chat as well. We're gonna send you an email with the replay and recording of this lecture as well too. Brother Falk, again, it's been amazing. It's been a pleasure. Definitely look forward to seeing you again. Give Kitty our best and have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Well, wonderful, most appreciated. Okay, it's been an honor, everyone, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good Saturday, everybody. Thank you for coming out as well.
Enjoy the rest of the day, everyone. Take care. Thanks on behalf of Kofi, Naheem, myself, and the 5th Manhattan District. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today.
Himself is Raphael Present, just by the way.
Thank you, my brothers, for putting this together.
I second that. This was an outstanding presentation.